From cute but adorable octopuses that can kill, to the most dangerous buzzing creature in all of Africa, and it's not a mosquito. Here are 10 small animals that you should never touch. Number 10. Blue-ringed octopus. The next time you're out for a swim in the ocean and you come upon a tiny little octopus with blue rings all over its body, don't even think about touching it. The blue-ringed octopus produces an incredibly potent neurotoxin known as tetrodotoxin, which can cause you some serious harm. According to the Ocean Conservatory, this is the type of neurotoxin that is also found in the infamous pufferfish. The venom is produced by bacteria in the octopus's salivary glands and is more toxic than any venom secreted by a land animal. The octopus typically uses its venom for hunting prey such as crabs and small fish. It pecks its prey with its beak, thereby inserting the venom, and then the octopus uses its beak to pick off little scraps of meat while its victim is still alive and helplessly paralysed. Yeah, this is a pretty brutal octopus. In humans, the bites from the blue-ringed octopus can be deadly. The venom will first block the nerve signals throughout your body, causing you to become completely numb. Other symptoms will soon follow, such as nausea, vision loss, and loss of motor skills. In the end, the venom will cause complete muscle paralysis, including the muscles you use to breathe, and you will eventually die. The only way to survive the bites from a blue-ringed octopus is if you're put on artificial respiration immediately. Number 9. Deathstalker. With a name like Deathstalker, you should already know not to touch it. This tiny little scorpion is also known as the Israeli desert scorpion. It's a dull yellow in colour and can grow to be about 4.5 inches in length, which is pretty small for a scorpion. It has a thin tail and lives for around 6 years if nothing eats it. At the end of its long tail is a stinger that is typically coloured black. They can be found roaming around dry desert areas in the north of Africa and throughout the Middle East. They make their homes under stones and inside natural burrows, and they capture their prey by springing out of holes and pinching little animals with their little pinchy pincers. But what makes these Deathstalker scorpions particularly deadly is their poison. The Deathstalker scorpion has the strongest venom out of any scorpion on Earth. If you decided to touch one for some silly reason, it would probably sting you, and you would then convulse, slip into paralysis, and eventually die due to heart and respiratory failure. As a side note, you can typically tell how deadly a scorpion is by its size. Scorpions that are really big and have powerful pincers don't generally have deadly toxins, but something as tiny as the Deathstalker with little weak pincers is going to have much stronger poison, and this one does. Have you ever seen one of these? Let me know in the comments below. Number 8. Cone snail. You wouldn't normally think about touching a snail. Even the snails and slugs in your garden are pretty gross and pretty slimy. You're probably not picking them up and rubbing them on your face. However, if you are a weirdo who likes to play with snails, there is one snail you definitely want to stay away from. It's known as the cone snail, and they are the deadliest snail in the world. They harpoon their prey using a tooth-like spear that injects the victim with deadly toxins, paralysing them instantly. This allows the cone snail to slowly pull the unsuspecting fish or worm inside of its shell so that it can digest it whole. What's really interesting is that after the snail harpoons other animals with its weird tooth, the tooth is then discarded and instantly replaced by a new one. It's like having a gun that never runs out of bullets. It's believed that most cone snails travel with about 20 of these harpoon teeth locked and loaded at all times, but they can continue to make new ones. The deadliest of all 800 different species of cone snails is known as the cigarette snail, which is typically found in the Indo-Pacific region. The reason it's called a cigarette snail is because the toxin it delivers into your bloodstream is so powerful that you only have enough time to finish a single cigarette before you die from its attack. This should be a warning to any shell collector. Watch out for these deadly snails. And now for number 7, but first, let me know if you've ever encountered any of these animals, and what other animals you would like to see in future videos. And be sure to subscribe because we have lots more coming up. Number 7. Boomslang. This one should be pretty self-explanatory. You would have to be a complete nutjob to voluntarily touch a snake. It's estimated that somewhere between 1 million and 5 million people are bitten by snakes each year, with about 1/5 of bites resulting in death. Of course, that number is much lower than it was a few decades ago thanks to antivenoms, and there being less snakes in civilized places. But that doesn't mean you should go around stroking every snake you see, especially not the deadly boomslang snake. Unlike most poisonous snakes, like vipers that have their fangs at the front of their jaw, boomslang snakes have their fangs at the rear of their jaw. This would usually make it very difficult for them to sink their fangs deep into a person, but because the boomslang snake can open its mouth at almost a 180-degree angle when it's biting, it's able to sink its fangs deep into your flesh. And that's when the horrifying venom gets pumped into your veins. The good news is that you're probably not going to run into one of these green and black serpents anytime soon. They don't typically hang out in North America. Number 6. Africanized bees. We're going to do something a little bit different for this one. It's time to talk about killer bees, also known as Africanized honeybees. They have a notorious reputation for being some of the most deadly and aggressive bees on the planet. However, according to a report by CNN, that is absolutely not the case. Killer bees are smaller than normal bees, they have less powerful venom, but they are still pretty aggressive. Yes, killer bees are the angriest bees in the world, but they're not actually going to murder you. At least, it's not likely. Where did killer bees come from? Well, in 1956, a Brazilian scientist imported African bees to South America. These bees eventually escaped, bred with European bees in the wild, and gave birth to a whole new species. And of course, they gradually began to spread. By 1985, they had reached Mexico, and by 2014, killer bees were all over the United States and Canada. Somewhere along the line, the Africanized honeybees became known as killer bees, but they don't actually do much killing. Still, this is a small animal that you don't want to touch. They are aggressive, and if you go poking around their hive, you are going to get a pretty nasty surprise. Unless you have an allergic reaction to bee stings, it will take about 1,000 stings from these bees to kill you. And while typical European bees are not going to come out with that kind of force, Africanized bees will. Over the past 50 years, Africanized honeybees, aka killer bees, have been responsible for several hundred human deaths. Number 5. Tsetse fly. The tsetse fly is one of the lesser known pests in the world, mainly due to it living primarily in Africa. This is not an insect you want to let crawl around on your skin. The bite from the tsetse fly can be deadly, but not for the same reason as mosquitoes or other flies. The tsetse fly is notorious for spreading something known as African sleeping sickness. There are 2 different types of African sleeping sickness, depending on which region you're in, and it's typically transmitted through the bite of one of these annoying flies. African sleeping sickness can be just as deadly as other diseases, such as malaria, except it takes upwards of 2 months for the patients to become deceased. If this fly bites you, the first sign of trouble is going to be a big red chancre sore. If you contract the disease, you will quickly begin suffering from a fever, brutal headaches, extreme fatigue, a swollen throat, aching joints, and a skin rash. As the disease persists, you will get progressively more confused, your personality may change, and as the infection invades your central nervous system, even more neurological problems will occur. If left untreated, you will probably die. The lesson of this story is to bring your insect repellent with you on your next trip to Africa. Don't let these flies touch you. Number 4. Brazilian wandering spider. It should be no surprise that Brazil is home to some of the world's most terrifying small animals. In fact, I could go on and on about 1,000 different animals in the Brazilian jungles that you should never touch. But let's keep it simple. Our big no-no of today is the Brazilian wandering spider. It's also known as the banana spider, and it goes by the scientific name Phonutria, which is Greek for murderess. That's because this spider is one of the most venomous on Earth. Its bite can easily kill a human, and even with antivenom you might not be so lucky. In fact, the Guinness Book of World Records has the Brazilian wandering spider named as the most venomous spider on the planet. There are a total of 8 species of Brazilian wandering spider, and you can find all of them living in Brazil. There are others found throughout Latin America, all the way from Argentina up to Costa Rica, and you should not touch any of them. Do you know why they also call them banana spiders? It's because these are the sneaky spiders that are sometimes exported to Europe and North America in shipments of bananas. They love living in a big cluster of bananas, so be careful the next time you're at the grocery store shopping for fruits and veggies. Number 3. Rats. Rats are universally despised. There is no place on Earth where people welcome the presence of rats, especially sewer rats. These horrible little monsters have caused havoc on civilization time after time as the spreaders of disease. And for this reason alone, nobody should ever touch a rat, especially a sewer rat. If you have a clean rat at home in a cage, it probably isn't diseased, but if you find one scrounging through your garbage and decide to try and pet it, you might come down with a bad case of the Black Plague. That's right, these disgusting little rodents were primarily to blame for transmitting the bubonic plague that wiped out almost all of Europe several hundred years ago. This is because of the fleas that live on the rats. The fleas can jump between rats and humans, spreading infection everywhere they go. It's not actually the rat itself that infects people with diseases, it's the bug carried on their fur that transmits typhus, bubonic plague, and so much more. Then you have to worry about the urine and saliva of rats, which can get you sick with a viral infectious disease known as lymphocytic choriomeningitis. This is why it's not a good idea to ever touch a rat. Don't even touch anything that the rat has touched, as a single drop of urine, saliva, or feces can get you so sick that you end up in hospital. If you find rats in your house, you better call an exterminator immediately. Number 2. Feral cats. There is nothing sadder than seeing a poor stray cat meowing in the alley at night. It's just so sad, and it undoubtedly makes you want to go outside, pick up the stray cat, and bring it into your house to cuddle you all day. However, you should stay far away from stray cats, which are often feral. Feral cats are the mangiest of all the felines, and they typically hang out in dumpsters, around abandoned buildings, and in heavily wooded areas. They are almost always full of diseases, just like rats. There is a stiff difference between the fluffy house cat that purrs against your leg and the feral cat screeching from the dumpster at night. To make things worse, feral cats often hang out in something known as a feral cat colony, which is basically a big group of rabid cats that take over abandoned basements, decaying tenements, sewer systems, and everywhere else full of grossness. And just like rats, any feral cat is able to carry parasites and diseases that can be transmitted to you, a human. You might think petting a stray cat outside is showing it some love, but you'll definitely regret it when a week later you're infected with a horrible disease and sent to hospital. At the very least, you can get ringworm from hanging out with feral cats, and though it's not going to kill you, it's still pretty gross. Number 1. Baby bears. If you don't live in an area heavily populated by bears, you have probably never thought twice about what to do if you stumble upon a baby bear. There is no arguing that bears are some of the most adorable, ferocious beasts still living on our planet. There is nothing cuter than a baby bear rolling through the grass near the side of a hiking trail. But don't you dare approach a baby bear, and don't even think about touching it. If you see a baby bear, chances are 100% that the mama bear is very close by and ready to eat your brains. Typically, bears are not aggressive. They will run away or do whatever they can to avoid a fight, and they won't actually eat your brains. But if you get the crazy idea to try and touch a bear's baby, you'll probably see the big one charging out of the woods like a very real beast. Bears can actually run at around 37 miles per hour. Even if you stopped on the side of the road to try and touch some baby bears you saw near the edge of the forest, you probably wouldn't have time to make it back to your car before the mama bear pounced. Have you ever had a run-in with one of these small but deadly animals? Let me know in the comments section. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. See you again soon for another amazing video.